The rain hammered the tin roof, 1,000 tiny drum beats against the silence in the small ranch house. I stood frozen, my fingers gripping the cold metal of a soldier's dog tag. It wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a ghost from a past I had tried so hard to bury. Across the table, Rhett's shoulders shook, not from the cold, but from the weight of the confession that was about to shatter my world. "Clara," he began, his voice barely a whisper against the roaring thunder outside. "I wasn't just there when Eli died. I rode beside him. I was his brother in arms." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at him, my mind refusing to accept it. This stranger, this drifter, I had taken in, the man who had helped me fix my broken ranch and mend my broken heart. He knew my husband. "Then why?" I choked out. "Why didn't you tell me? Why pretend to be a stranger?" Rhett's gaze fell to the floor. His eyes clouded with a guilt so profound, it seemed to suck the air from the room. Because the man who gave the order that killed him was my own commanding officer and my father. The world tilted. My breath caught in my throat. This man wasn't just a drifter. He was a living, breathing connection to the very moment that had destroyed my life. Rhett finally sat down, his eyes fixed on the worn floorboards, as if they held the answers to a history he couldn't escape. "It was a scouting mission gone wrong," he said, his voice hollow. "We were ambushed in the canyon. Eli, he was hit trying to save me." He swallowed, the memory raw and painful. "My father ordered a retreat. He left him there to die." My heart clenched. I had imagined Eli's last moments 1,000 times, each scenario more heroic and lonely than the last. But this was a nightmare I had never conceived. I went back, Rhett continued, his voice cracking. "Against orders." He was still breathing, Clara. He grabbed my hand and made me promise. He made me promise I'd look after you. He said you deserved better than what the war left behind. Quiet tears streamed down my face. My husband, dying in the arms of the man sitting before me, entrusting me to him. "Why come here?" I whispered, the question hanging in the air between us. "After all these years." Rhett looked up, his eyes meeting mine, filled with a sorrow that mirrored my own. "Because guilt eats a man alive," he said simply. And I needed to make it right. Outside, the storm finally broke, the rain softening to a gentle drizzle, as if the sky itself had wept all its anger away. In the days that followed, the silence in the house changed. It was no longer cold and empty, but heavy, thick with all the words we couldn't bring ourselves to say. Rhett continued to work the ranch, his movements as steady as ever, but a new shadow lived in his eyes. A shadow I recognized because I saw it in my own reflection. At night, I'd hear him pacing outside, his restless footsteps a match for my own restless heart. I would wake sometimes to find him standing by the mantel, staring at the old photograph of Eli, his face a mask of grief. Then one morning, I found him by the stables, packing his saddlebag. A familiar dread coiled in my stomach. "You're leaving." "I reckon I should," he said, his voice soft, careful not to look at me. "The more I stay, the more pain I bring." "No." The word escaped before I could stop it. I stepped closer, my hands trembling. "You fixed this ranch. You helped me breathe again. Don't take that away now." He finally turned to look at me then. Really look at me. And in his eyes, I saw that he wasn't just seeing the widow of his fallen friend anymore. He was seeing the woman I had become. Scarred, yes, but strong. Still capable of feeling something new. "I don't deserve forgiveness, Clara," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Maybe," I whispered back, "but sometimes forgiveness chooses us, not the other way around." That night was the town's annual lantern festival. Down by the river, Families gathered, their laughter and music weaving through the cool night air. They lit paper lanterns, sending them floating down the current. Small beacons of light to honor the memory of the dead. With shaking hands, I lit a lantern for Eli. Rhett stood silently beside me, his hat held respectfully in his hands. As I released the lantern, watching it join the river of floating stars, I whispered into the darkness, "Goodbye, Eli, and thank you for sending him." The words hung in the air. Rhett looked at me, his expression unreadable in the flickering light. Before he could speak, I reached out and took his hand. It was a simple, almost shy gesture, but it was everything. The warmth of his skin against mine was grounding. In that fragile moment, as our eyes met, it felt like all the shared grief, all the guilt, and sorrow that had defined us began to melt into something else, something hopeful, something alive. We didn't need to speak. We just stood there, hand in hand, watching the lights dance on the water. Weeks turned into a gentle spring. Green shoots pushed through the soil, and for the first time in years, I felt life returning not just to the land, but to me. I found myself laughing again, a sound I thought had been buried with Eli. But then one morning, while feeding the hens, a wave of dizziness washed over me, so strong I had to sit down right there in the dirt. A week later, the town doctor paid a visit. He left me sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the floor, my heart pounding a frantic, disbelieving rhythm against my ribs. I was pregnant. When Rhett returned from the fields, his face etched with the honest fatigue of a day's hard work. I tried to form the words, but they wouldn't come. He saw the terror in my eyes, the tremor in my hands. He knelt before me, and somehow, he just knew. "I'll take care of you," he said, his voice a steady anchor in my swirling panic. "Both of you." Tears fell, hot and fast. I turned away, unable to face the compassion in his eyes. "How, Rhett? How can we do this? The town will never forgive us. They'll call me a sinner. And you? They'll call you a thief who stole another man's life." He took my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. He made me look at him. "Then let them talk," he said, a fire in his gaze I hadn't seen before. "I've spent my whole life running from ghosts, Clara. Maybe it's time I finally start fighting for something real." Later that night, long after I'd fallen into a troubled sleep, Rhett sat at the table, the oil lamp casting long dancing shadows on the walls. He picked up a pen, the paper trembling slightly in his hand, as he began to write. "To the man whose name I carry in shame, Father, you left a good soldier to die, but he left me with something you will never understand. Honor. I have found the woman he loved, and she deserves a life of peace, even if it costs me mine. If you come for me, I won't hide. Rhett Carson." He carefully folded the letter and tucked it inside his old cavalry jacket. Then he walked to the window, his gaze sweeping over the dark, sleeping valley, but his eyes fixed on the distant horizon. Because far beyond the borders of our little ranch, a single light flickered in the darkness, a lantern that wasn't from town. Someone was coming. Thank you so much for watching. This story has so much more to tell, and I can't wait to share the next chapter with you. If you're as invested in Clara and Rhett's journey as I am, please hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. See you in the next video.